Most people have convinced themselves that growing real food requires real land, not a balcony, not a porch, not a few pots crammed onto a small patio. They picture raised beds, irrigation systems, and weekends spent digging. And if all they have is a handful of containers and a few square feet, they assume it's not worth trying seriously. That assumption is wrong because some of the most productive vegetables on earth don't care how much land you have. They care about what's in the pot, give them the right container, the right depth, the right drainage, and they don't just survive, they produce. In fact, some of these crops are so aggressive in containers that a single pot can keep you harvesting for weeks or months straight. Today, we're looking at 13 vegetables that produce the most in containers. Some of them hit their first harvest in under a month, others keep feeding you all season from the same plant. And number 5 is the one that shocks people the most because the entire harvest is hidden underground until the very last moment. Number 1 gives you 2 completely different edible harvests from a single planting. Let's count them down. Number 13, radish. Most people overlook radishes. They seem too small, too simple, too ordinary. That's a mistake. Radishes are the fastest producing vegetable on this list. Under the right conditions, some varieties are ready in 25 to 30 days. That means one pot can run through multiple full harvest cycles in a single season. They don't need depth. A medium container holds dozens of plants at once. That's high density, compact growing, and fast results from a very small footprint. Radishes are also cool season crops. They produce in spring and fall. When most warm season vegetables haven't started or have already finished, that extends your growing window significantly. Here's what most people miss. The greens are edible too. Young radish leaves work in salads, stir fries, and soups. So while the root develops below, you're already harvesting above. Radishes matter for one specific reason. They prove something important to beginners, that a simple pot on a balcony can produce real food faster than most people ever imagined. That shift in mindset is worth more than the radish itself. Number 12, green onion. If you want to understand how efficient containers can be, start here. Green onions grow straight up, not outward. That means one container holds far more plants than anything that spreads sideways. They use vertical space the way smart growers use all their space completely. But the real advantage is how they behave after harvest. Cut the green tops, leave the roots intact, and in many cases, they come back and produce again. That turns one small pot into a continuous supply. Not a single-use crop, they're also endlessly practical. Eggs, soups, rice, noodles, dressings. Green onions go into almost everything most people cook regularly. Growing them means your kitchen is never without them. Some growers skip seeds entirely. They take store-bought green onions, drop the root ends into a pot, and start harvesting within days. One of the cheapest crops you'll ever start. One pot, one sunny spot, constant production. That's what container efficiency looks like. Number 11, lettuce. Most people harvest lettuce wrong, and it costs them weeks of production. They wait for the whole head to form, cut everything at once, and start over. Meanwhile, container growers who understand the cut and come again method get an entirely different result. You take the outer leaves, you leave the center untouched, and the plant keeps growing for weeks, sometimes longer. That approach turns one pot into a reliable salad source rather than a single-use harvest. Lettuce also grows well at density. Several plants fit together in one wide planter, compounding the production from a single container. And because lettuce grows quickly, the time between planting and your first harvest stays short enough to keep people engaged. There's another advantage most people don't mention. Store-bought lettuce loses quality fast after harvest. Homegrown leaves cut minutes before eating tastes dramatically better. And because containers move, you can chase the right light. Full sun in spring, partial shade in summer. That flexibility makes lettuce one of the most adaptable crops on a patio. One container, weeks of salad. Number 10, beet. Here's something most new growers don't know. When you plant beets, you're not planting one crop, you're planting two. The root develops underground. That's the part most people picture. But the leaves are also edible, and they're growing above ground the entire time. That means while the beetroot is still developing below, the greens are already producing food above. One container, two harvests, different timing. The controlled soil environment also helps. In hard garden ground, beetroots hit rocks, twist, split. In a container filled with loose potting mix, roots develop clean and even. You control the growing medium from the start. Beets handle cooler temperatures well. making them one of the more dependable crops before summer heat arrives. And once harvested, the roots store well. So this isn't just a container that produces food for today. It's a container that produces food for weeks after harvest day. Double harvest, long storage, compact growth. That's the beet advantage. Number 9, bush bean. Bush beans don't look impressive when they're young. Low, leafy, no trellises needed, which can make them seem almost too simple. That changes fast. Once bush beans start producing, they keep producing. The cycle is direct. The more you harvest, the more the plant puts out. Leave pods on the vine too long and production slows. Stay on top of it and the container just keeps going. Unlike pole beans that climb and need tall support structures, bush beans stay compact. That makes them practical for patios and balconies, where overhead space is limited. There's also a nutritional angle that matters here. Bush beans aren't just a vegetable. They carry protein and fiber. That makes them more filling, more substantial than leafy greens. And if you're trying to grow food that actually sustains people, beans belong in the container lineup. They also fix nitrogen in the soil. So the container they grew in is actually in better shape for the next crop than it was before. Compact, productive, improving. That's a lot for one pot. Number 8, kale. Kale is the kind of crop that earns your trust slowly and then doesn't stop. You plant it, it grows. You harvest the outer leaves, leave the center, and the plant responds by pushing out more growth. That cycle doesn't stop in a week. It doesn't stop in a month. One container of kale can feed you for the entire growing season. It also grows upright, which means it uses vertical space well. On a balcony where every inch matters, that growth pattern is close to ideal, and it handles cold better than most of what's on this list. Many gardeners notice that frost actually improves the flavor. The leaves get sweeter after a cold night. While other crops are finished for the year, kale keeps producing. From a nutritional standpoint, it's one of the most dense crops you can grow. Vitamins, minerals, fiber. If you're filling containers with purpose, kale earns its spot. One plant looks modest at first, but after a full season, that single pot will have produced more food than most people expect from anything they've ever grown in a container. Slow start, long run, high yield. Number 7, carrots feel like they belong in the ground. Long rows in a proper garden bed, pulled one by one in the fall. Containers often produce better carrots than backyard soil does. Here's why. Carrots need loose, deep, rock-free growing medium. In backyard soil with compacted clay, buried debris, or rocky patches, roots twist, fork, and come out misshapen. In a container filled with quality potting mix, the roots go straight down through exactly the medium they want. You control the environment entirely, which means you control the result. A medium to deep container holds a surprising number of carrot plants. Fill it right, thin the seedlings properly, and you get dozens of roots from one pot. Carrots also store exceptionally well after harvest, which extends the value of a single planting far beyond the day you pull them. And in the kitchen, they're about as versatile as a vegetable gets. Soups, roasting, fresh snacking, juicing, salads. That practical kitchen value makes every container of carrots worth the effort. For people who assumed root vegetables couldn't belong in containers, carrots are usually the crop that changes that assumption entirely. Now, I want you to tell me, which state are you watching from? I would love to know, and if you haven't liked this video, do well to like and subscribe to this channel. Number 6, cucumbers want to climb, and when you let them, a single pot turns into something that surprises most people. Give the vine a trellis, a railing, a balcony fence, anything vertical, and the plant stops competing for ground space and starts reaching upward. The same container footprint suddenly produces far more food than any sprawling ground vine would. And cucumbers don't just produce, they produce continuously. Once the plant starts setting fruit, the harvest window extends for weeks. The key is picking regularly. Cucumbers left on the vine too long signal the plant to slow production. Keep harvesting and it keeps making more. There's also the flavor argument. A cucumber picked the same morning you eat it is a different vegetable than one that's been refrigerated for days. Crisp, cool, no wax coating, no transit time. One container near a fence, railing, or wall becomes a vertical food system. Multiple containers lined up, that's a wall of production most people wouldn't believe was coming from pots. This is where people start realizing, container gardening isn't a compromise. It's a different method entirely. Number 5, potatoes in containers feel like a secret. Nothing about them looks dramatic while they grow. You plant seed potatoes, add soil as the stems emerge, keep going until the container is full, and then you wait for weeks. The plant sits there, leaves green, doing what looks like nothing, but underground, something else is happening. Roots are spreading, tubers are forming. The real harvest is building in the dark, completely out of sight. Then harvest day arrives, you tip the container over, you dig through the soil, and potatoes start coming out. 1, then 5, then more, filling your hands, the ground, a bucket you didn't think you'd need. That moment is the one that changes how people think about containers, because suddenly a pot isn't just a pot, it's a hidden food reserve. It's calorie dense food that was building underground the entire time you thought nothing was happening. Potatoes also store well. That one container didn't just produce food for dinner, it produced food for weeks. And once someone experiences that first potato harvest from a single pot, they stop looking at empty containers the same way. They start counting how many more they can fill. If you want to know exactly what container depth, soil mix, and spacing gives you the biggest potato harvest from a single pot, that full breakdown is inside the Complete Plant Care Handbook. Link in the description. Number 4, peppers are quiet producers. They don't demand attention. They don't sprawl or climb or take over the patio. They stay exactly where you have put them and just keep making fruit. A single healthy pepper plant in a container can produce dozens of fruits across a full season. The key is warmth, and containers naturally deliver that. Pots heat up faster than garden beds, and peppers respond to warm roots with stronger growth and heavier yields. Bell peppers, jalapenos, banana peppers, cayenne. Most varieties adapt to containers easily, and compact varieties especially thrive in limited space without sacrificing production. The storage advantage matters too. Peppers can be eaten fresh, roasted, frozen, dried, or turned into sauces. Every harvest has multiple uses, which makes a single container more flexible than most people expect. And there's something visually satisfying about a pepper plant in full production. Bright red, yellow, orange, green fruits hanging from one compact plant. It doesn't look like a compromise. It looks like a garden. Steady, consistent production from one compact container is worth just as much as one big, dramatic harvest. Number 3, zucchini. Zucchini has a reputation, and it's earned. In backyard gardens, a single plant can overwhelm a household with more food than they know what to do with. In containers, that production compresses into a smaller footprint, but it doesn't disappear. Compact bush varieties are the right choice for pots. They stay manageable, but manageable doesn't mean low output. One healthy container, zucchini can produce continuously for most of the warm season, and the fruits themselves are substantial. This isn't a crop where you harvest a handful of leaves. You're pulling full-size vegetables that become meals. One zucchini can become a side dish, a grilled main, a batch of bread, or a supply you freeze for later. The growth is also dramatic. Leaves expand fast, flowers appear, and fruit seems to arrive overnight. That visible, rapid progress keeps gardeners engaged and coming back. One pot of zucchini can fill a kitchen counter, and if that surprises you, then zucchini has already done its job. Number 2, cherry tomato. If there is one container crop that makes people fully believe in small space gardening, it's this one. Give a cherry tomato plant a container, a cage, and consistent sunlight, and it becomes a tower of fruit. Not a few tomatoes, not a modest yield, dozens of fruits at a time, and then more behind them. Unlike large tomato varieties that tend to produce in defined waves, cherry tomatoes can keep going for months. One plant across a full season may produce hundreds of individual fruits. That's not an exaggeration. That's what a single pot is capable of. The plant grows upward. It climbs the cage, fills it, and keeps reaching. Height instead of ground space, which makes it nearly ideal for balconies and patios where square footage is the real constraint. And then there's the taste difference. A cherry tomato picked the same day you eat it, still warm from the sun, is almost a different food than what comes in a plastic clamshell from a grocery store. Once people taste that difference, most of them stop buying cherry tomatoes entirely. One plant, one pot, hundreds of fruits, the whole season. Cherry tomatoes don't just perform in containers, they thrive in them. If you are enjoying this video, do well to subscribe so it reaches more gardeners. Now let's get into the number 1 sweet potato. This crop earns the top spot because it does something no other vegetable on this list does. It gives you two completely different edible harvests from one planting. While the plant grows above ground, the leaves are edible, and in many cultures, sweet potato greens are a staple. So you harvest the leaves through the growing season as food. Then harvest day arrives. You empty the container and the tubers come out. Roots that have been building underground the entire time the plant looked like it was just growing foliage. One pot, two different crops, one planting. Sweet potatoes also love heat, and containers create exactly the warm soil environment they want. That encourages vigorous growth above ground and a serious hidden harvest below it. The vines spread, the plant looks dense and full above. And beneath the surface, tubers are forming throughout the entire growing period, quietly, out of sight, until the moment you dig them out. They also store well after harvest. That container didn't just produce food for today, it produced food for months, calorie dense, heat loving, dual harvest, long shelf life. If you had to pick one crop that proves a container can function as a complete small space food system, this is it. One pot becomes greens, roots, and stored food. That's the sweet potato. What these 13 crops prove isn't complicated. Growing serious food doesn't require serious land. It requires serious thinking about what you put in your containers. The growers who produce the most from the smallest spaces aren't the ones who have the most pots. They're the ones who understand which crops multiply effort instead of just using it. Every container on this list can run through multiple harvests, can produce food above and below ground, can keep going for weeks after you first thought it was done. A pot doesn't look like much standing empty on a porch, but fill it with the right plant, manage it correctly, and it stops being a container. It becomes productive ground, the kind of ground that doesn't care whether your property has a backyard or not. That's the shift. Once you stop thinking of containers as a limitation and start thinking of them as a system, the balcony, the porch, the small patio, all of it starts working harder than most people ever thought possible. Most people look at a patio and see decoration. The right grower looks at that same patio and sees a harvest they haven't taken yet.